Hello, I'm Judy Stiles. Thank you for joining us this week on Newsmakers. Well, this year, of course, is a big election year, a lot of attention on what's happening nationally, but locally, April is a big time here in the Joplin area. We have the City Council, and of course, we have the Joplin School District with a proposal for voters. That's our focus today on the program. I'd like to introduce the school superintendent, Melinda Moss, as well as a committee member with the campaign we're talking about, Kelli Perigo. Thank you very much for being here today.
Well, it's our pleasure.
We had a chance to visit in the fall, and at that time, kind of reminding the viewers, we're talking about the fact that you were looking at the possibility of having a bond issue, looking at some schools. So
yes.
Maybe we need to start off just with a little bit of background. You know, what has led us to this point?
Okay. Well, the two main issues on the April 7th ask is permission to build a new elementary, a new site that combines Columbia and West Central. And at our last visit, we talked about the challenges of those two campuses. Right. And they were both built in the 1920s. One has severe structural issues that really at this point cannot be mitigated. And then the other is right adjacent within feet of 4-lane highway, which is 7th Street.
Right.
And so you have the same 90-plus-year-old infrastructure at both campuses, but you also have some severe safety issues at those two. And we're still utilizing trailers because of overcrowding at one of those sites. So we're asking to merge those two elementaries into a new elementary school. Mm-hmm. The other piece of that is Kelsey Norman Elementary has very much outgrown its space, and they're utilizing trailers and still not having enough space. So this would also include a building addition to the existing Kelsey Norman site.
Great. Well, I know you have a PowerPoint, and as we go along, our viewers will be able to see some of these points that you're bringing mm-hmm. up, you know, talking about the facilities. And it was a long process. I remember talking last fall that it wasn't an overnight thing. You put a lot of research into these facilities, and what are the options?
We did. We had a facilities committee that was made up of several community stakeholders and parents and even a student. Mm-hmm. And we looked at demographer studies, we looked at engineering reports, we looked at all the campuses across the district for a long-term facility plan. Mm-hmm. And as all of that evolved, and we took tours of several sites, they really ended up focusing on the priorities being, let's address our most aged facilities, let's get rid of the modular units, i.e. trailers, right. And then let's make sure that we are safe and equitable with our spaces for all students across the district.
We're seeing some of the slides. And
yes, this is West Central.
West Central, and right on the road, basically.
Right on the road. And a lot of the teachers' testimony was at the end of the day, when our littles are dismissed, they've mm-hmm. been cooped up all day, and what do they want to do?
They want to run.
They want to run. And so they're having to stand there and keep them off the 7th as they're trying to load buses, and mm-hmm. and it's quite frightening as most people run that about 40 miles an hour, mm-hmm. and it's a concern.
Really?
So they wanted to utilize a no tax increase bond issue, mm-hmm. and the district has the bonding capacity right now to do that, with permission from the voters to issue a 20-year bond from the date of issue,
right.
And keep that same 91 cents that is currently in our debt service levy.
So that's kind of the basic of what you're asking. Now, Kelli, you're involved with the Citizens Committee supporting this.
I am, yes.
So tell me about that, and you know, how this evolved from the school board saying, okay, we're going to have an election for the citizens to get involved.
Absolutely. I'm one parent on the committee. One of the co-chairs, David Weaver, is our other co-chair. Tasha mm-hmm. Schuler is our treasurer. And we are a group of community members, parents, citizens that want to get our voters the same information and share the facts about the bond issue, but want them to know why they should vote yes. And so I'm a parent in the school mm-hmm. district. I actually grew up in Joplin. I went to Kelsey Norman Elementary, went to Joplin High School, and now have 2 little boys at Cecil Floyd Elementary. And people may ask, why are you involved? I'm involved because I want the same opportunities that my kids get at Cecil Floyd at these new schools, but also, and in fact, all of us, all of the kids in the district, eventually my kids will go to school with students from Columbia and West Central, and hopefully this new school. And you know, my kids have nice big classrooms. Safety is a big factor as Dr. Moss was saying. Being near busy streets and not secure entrances, those are other issues that all parents should be concerned with. So our group of committee members is together trying to get the word out, as well as the school district sharing the facts, as Dr. Moss said, and hopefully we'll get that vote yes on April 7th.
So your volunteer community members who are working
Absolutely.
With the school district who have the facts and the information for you.
And that's what we're there. we want people to know why they should vote yes by sharing the information that the committee and the planning committees have gone through to get to the point where we're putting an April 7th request out there.
Great. Well, Dr. Moss, some people might need a little refresher of how many elementaries we have. We're mentioning 3 right now, but the scope of things, Joplin School District, how do you serve the community?
We have 11 elementary schools. We have 3 middle schools. We have the 1 high school. And then we also have various alternative programs throughout town.
So when we talk about equitable, as you mentioned one school that is newer, I guess, in layman's terms, and then older schools, as far as just even facilities, there's not equal opportunities.
Right. So our average square footage for a classroom at both Columbia and West Central is 651 square feet. Other classrooms across the rest of the district run between 900 and 1,100 square feet. So when you think about the 1920s, when those buildings were built, they were fine buildings in the 20s. But I envision even the desk that I used years ago might have been a wooden chair with a sleeve that came over, and you had the writing space. And when you think today, our workforce is asking for students that can collaborate, that can work together on project-based learning, because we're in an age of digital and screens, and so we need our kids to be able to talk to each other and move about.
So you don't have those formal rows and aisles.
Yes, and so when you've got 24 children packed into that small of a space, that maybe they have a Chromebook, they have large textbooks and whatnot, it's impossible then to have the storage or the ample space for any kind of project-based or collaborative learning, because you're kind of stepping over one to get to the other.
Because you can't work around, right?
Yes, and so as people toured across the district, and that's part of what we're talking about with the inequities. And when those campuses were built, we didn't have special education. We didn't have breakfast, lunch, dinner like we have now. Most kids went home to eat lunch and they came back. And so just those programming space like occupational therapy and physical therapy, speech therapy, resource for learning disabilities, none of that was there at the time. So we've had to cobble up and create nooks and crannies in these buildings that really now are just overtly insufficient.
We're talking about aging and the problems that come with that.
Yes.
And so forth. So the process of choosing the location, I know you'll have some information coming up here, but the people have heard Dover Hill.
Yes.
And I recall there was a news conference where the city said, well, this is a park, but we're going to give it to the school district.
Right.
So give me some background on how that process went through.
Oh my goodness, when we first started thinking about merging these schools, we started looking for available land and suitable land because we wanted to keep the school site as close to West Central and Columbia as we could.
Right.
And when you start looking at vacant land spaces in those areas, there's a reason why a lot of that land is still vacant.
Not buildable.
Right, and so we did a lot of research on, where might there be mining features, where might there still be reclamation issues, or just what's adequate acreage, which nowadays for an elementary school the standard is about 10 acres. More or less, depending on how that land lays.
Right.
So it was a real challenge. And we looked at land even to the east of Main Street, but we felt like if those 2 zones had to cross Main Street into a newer zone, that could be problematic.
You probably have a ripple effect of all the schools where the kids attend.
Yeah, so we heavily researched, I would say probably 5 different properties. And the one and only that really kept coming back buildable and suitable, and there's a few test holes on those eastern and southern borders of that land, but Dover Hill is solid. We've done soil borings on the site, and we consistently hit rock at 20 feet. Now I know in Joplin, in this part of the country, you might miss a feature, but for what we've investigated, we've consistently hit rock at 20 feet. The Landreth family donated that land to the city in the 1930s, and there was stipulations then that it needed to be city space and park space. And so the other piece of this that people may not know is that we actually were able to contact every heir of that family, and they all were very supportive of it becoming a school and thought that was a wonderful use and signed off on that as well, because we wanted to be sure that we did our due diligence on that property. And so now we've selected not only Corner Greer as our architect, but also with the support of DLR, a larger firm, and Crossland Construction. And Crossland Construction has a lot of experience with what we call construction management at risk. And so they are working right now in conjunction with the architect to make sure that everything is designed is also buildable on the site. And they've had great input into what that site plan is going to look like and how we're going to engineer the roadways in and off. We've talked with MoDOT. We have already hired a traffic engineer. So we are really trying to do our due diligence to make sure that this is a quality, buildable project that will stay on budget, and we can prove ourselves to the community that we can deliver a fiscally responsible and quality space for our residents.
We had some pictures on the PowerPoint to help people visualize, because you could drive down Main Street and you look, if there's a hill, how are they going to put a school on top of the hill?
Right.
So people are running, you have to climb that hill somehow to get up there.
You do, and I was really surprised as they bring that slide up. We're looking at building a road off of Murphy, and we've actually even investigated floodplain and know that we can move those gates about 40 feet to the west. So that's going to give us a little more roadway on Murphy. There it is. And so to look at the road off of Murphy, there's 2 lanes then that will enter from either direction onto the property. The property is about 17 acres, and we'll have 2 rows of going in, staging, and we've measured, counted cars, and also researched Irving, Soaring Heights, others to give us
drop-offs and
perspective.
stuff for children?
Yes, and we can stage approximately 210 cars at any one time on the property. So that negates any concern that we'll be backing up traffic on Main, and that was important to us not to do so. And then there's a covered parent drop-off, and then people will have the option of exiting off the 3rd lane back onto Murphy, going either direction, or a right turn only onto Main Street. And then we're also adding a right turn lane at the south end of the property on Main, and we're shaving off that corner, because if you go out there today, it looks like you're a really sharp, awkward corner to turn back on itself. So there's a right turn lane, and we're shaving that corner off. And so the other piece I might point out is that we have separate bus loop that will not commingle with cars at all.
So the people dropping their children off don't have to wait for the bus to drive by.
Right, because it's never a good safety issue when you have buses and cars commingling, and so that's another safety feature of this site. We're able to get that separated. The other thing you mentioned is how steep. Oh, it's a hill. I was so pleasantly surprised, because if you look at that site plan, that Murphy Road kind of traverses the hill, and it's such a gradual incline as you're circling that 17 acres that at its steepest point, it's a 7% grade. And I was so pleasantly surprised when I heard that, but engineers through Anderson and Crossland have already vetted that out, and so it's not
You're not going to be climbing a mountain to get there.
No, and the other thing that we will be doing is we will be leveling that site some. We'll be taking about 10 feet off the top, but all that dirt is going to stay on the site, because then we'll be building up certain other areas to make for a nice site pad for the construction. So I feel confident that they're trying to think of every detail now before we even get to the bond vote.
So the size of the school, and you're moving 2 schools into one, are you planning for future growth in that facility?
We're planning for some growth. Right now, the 2 combined, if we combine them today, we'd have about 400 kids. We're building at capacity for 450. One thing our demographer study told us a year ago was that for the next 10 years, that section of town is expected to be flat to declining in terms of school-age families. I'm, though, optimistic that if the north side has a new school, and then you look at other developments across our town with the Zora bypass and other properties that may become available, I am optimistic for the North Side, and I think the North Side deserves a nice school, and I hope that we see some growth.
So it might stimulate more developments in that area, perhaps.
I think it will, because that's usually historically what happens in towns when new schools come in. So we're building it for 450, but you might also notice on that site plan drawing, there's a little black dash line at the end of the classroom side of the campus, because I asked the architect, let's draw this in case we do ever have to grow. We want it to be feasible to add on to. So that to me is another move toward fiscal responsibility to make sure that we're setting ourselves up should we ever need it.
So you have that room to develop it and put it on
Yes.
there. Right.
Yes.
So for parents around the district, their children, like you mentioned, might have a newer school now that has those facilities. Then you mentioned the ultimate goal is when they get to high school, they've all had that same opportunity to do that.
Absolutely, and I think that goes back to the equitable learning spaces and giving all of the Joplin students the opportunity to have the equitable, nice spaces and opportunity for the same classes that Dr. Moss was talking about, at Kelsey Norman. Some of their special classes, PE, music, art, are not in classrooms right now, and so it makes it difficult for those teachers to be able to offer those classes to students, and now all kids, hopefully after April 7th, will have the opportunity to enjoy spaces like that, not only the kids, but the teachers as well.
So Kelsey Norman, we really haven't talked about. I know we have some, pictures here as well. The addition then will help accommodate some of those, I don't want to say special programs, but additional programs that you're not having the space
Yes,
for now.
in this space we're looking to add special education classrooms, regular classroom spaces, boys and girls restrooms, some storage, and it'll be a nice enhancement to the campus and get them out of the trailers, and then space for what, as Kelly referred to right now, art and music do not have designated spaces.
So the teacher having to travel from room to room versus let's go to the music room.
Right.
Tie those together.
And getting the kids out of the trailers. I think that getting them into the school itself, near the safe room and the cafeteria and the gym area where they attend and go throughout their day.
Now, do you see that Kelsey Norman has grown right now to meet that need? Do you see that area remaining stable then? Has the school district looked at that with the demography?
It would appear that that area has kind of remained stable through time. Where we're really seeing the most growth is towards Soaring Heights in the southeast part of town. And there is a shift that direction. But with moving some programs around throughout town, we've been able to ease some of the stress on Soaring Heights for now.
Some of the people might be, viewers might be interested, how do you keep track of where those houses are being built or where the ages are growing, where the little kids are moving in,
Right.
basically. So that's something that's ongoing for the district.
Yes, we look at that annually, actually. And we always look at, okay, are our boundary lines for each zone correct for this year? And over the years, from year to year, we'll subtly move maybe a street over.
This neighborhood's not going to go to this school.
Right. We've done that with Cecil Floyd, with Irving, and just even within the last 3 or 4 years. This year we didn't have to, but we did move some programs from Soaring Heights to Irving. So it's a constant checkup
of it. Well, let's talk dollars and cents. And I'm sure, as parents and voters want to know, well, what's this going to cost us? So when you're talking to people, I guess let's start off with you, for community member, they're going to say, well, what's this going to cost me? I have to pay taxes.
Well, Dr. Moss was talking about, it maintains the bond capacity at the 91 cent per $100,000 house.
I think the very first slide talks about that.
Okay, so the breakdown of the cost.
The breakdown. So I think for me as a parent and a taxpayer, it's very fiscally responsible because they're going to maintain our taxing capacity, and I won't have to pay any more on property taxes than I am today to have this home. So it's just going to extend the tax bond for 7 more years. And the current one would expire in 2033, but this one will extend to 7 years to 2040 at that same bonding capacity. And I think, and I also think this slide will be present as well, it's interesting to know that where we fall equitably or actually lower than many of our competing and surrounding school districts in our conference. And so I think parents and the taxpayers need to understand that we are not any higher than like school districts or even smaller school districts, and I think that's a testament to the school district and the efforts and the research that's gone into place to try to do this in the most equitable way that it won't impact the taxpayers any more than their current tax base is right now. So yes, this is the slide that shows the bonding capacity of the like school districts around us, and we, I believe, are in red. And so you can see where others fall just slightly lower, and then the majority of the districts that we would compare ourselves to around the district are actually higher than our bonding capacity.
Right. We our operating levy plus our debt service levy is what is illustrated there, and it's our own conference state average in the black, and then districts of like size.
Okay.
So I would argue we're a bargain these days.
So when you compare what we're paying versus someone in a similar size situation with the school district, it's pretty comparable.
There's several
along those
neighboring
lines.
districts that are higher than we are.
Right. So for the dollars and cents, what are they saying? How is this overall package going to cost? You talk about
Right. Well, it'll be the same. Whatever you paid in property taxes
going to be the same bill
last
next
year,
year.
it'll be the same bill next year and the same bill after that, because we currently have 91 cents in our debt service levy. This just simply gives us permission to issue the bonds. Sure. Because our current bond will not retire until 2033, because it was issued in 13.
Right.
This bond will start in 20, end in 2040. So when Kelly said 7 more years.
From 33 to 40 for those years.
Yes.
Right. What the cost for the actual projects, these schools? How much, you have to obviously come up with estimates. What's going to cost for a new school, additions?
Right. We have put a lot of contingency into this because I wanted a robust rock contingency. I wanted a robust, so we've got 10 to 15% contingencies.
Those what ifs if we find
in
something.
almost every category. The bond itself will generate $25 million. And then we've looked at, okay, worst case scenario, if we should hit the contingencies, every one of them, and then also other commitments we've made with furniture, fixtures, all of that is into the budget. So overall, probably around 26.5, could be less than 25 depending on those contingencies, but we're not going to go over.
That's your dollar limit, right?
Yes, we're not going to go over our reserves, our contingency, or what the bond will generate. So we're looking at $25 million.
And another question on the fiscal side is people are wondering, well, you have this money for new schools. Do school districts still have money to maintain the current facilities? There's obviously 9 other schools or 8 other schools that still need to have that maintenance.
Yes, and that's one of the things that over the last 2 or 3 years since I came, I was adamant that we needed a replacement cycle on things such as roofs, HVAC units, school buses, all those capital outlay expenditures. So now we're transferring money annually to the cap outlay budget, because we know roofs don't last forever. HVAC doesn't last forever. And actually, at this next school board meeting, at the end of February, we'll be adopting next year's cap outlay budget, because we are paying close attention to making sure that we maintain and don't get behind in emergency mode those things that are so important.
Right, to keep the other ones up to speed and operating.
Yes, absolutely. And we've got some roofing projects and whatnot on deck for next year.
Now, people might wonder what type of vote is needed, as far as how many percentage or, what's the vote that's required to pass an issue like this?
It's a simple majority.
No, it's not
excuse me, it's
simple.
57.3% majority.
Yes,
Yes,
not
excuse me,
simple
not simple
Over
majority.
the 50%.
Excuse me, yes.
Yes.
It's a 57.3% majority that is needed to pass this on April 7th. So we are trying to get out into the community, do segments just as this, and meet with community groups and all the civics groups, parents. Our Vote Yes committee is making the rounds alongside the school district to all of the schools and parent-teacher association or PTO meetings, and wherever they'll have us talk, just make sure we're sharing the facts just as we are today.
And I know we have on the screen the Vote Yes, as a Vote Yes committee can actually say, please
Vote
support
yes,
this. School district gives the information.
I can give the facts, and then they have to come in with the vote yes, because I can't tell people how to vote since I'm a tax-supported employee.
Right.
But any book club, church group, civic group, this is my priority till April 7th, is to make sure that all of our voters are as informed as possible and that they are encouraged to vote. We want to hear their voice.
That's one of those issues that sometimes you hear the local elections, you don't get a big turnout.
Well, in April 7th, I think as you mentioned at the top of the segment, it is also a large city council election for the city of Joplin, as well as the school bond request. And so just reminding voters that if you are eligible to vote and haven't registered to vote, that deadline is March 11th. And we're trying to get that information out to the community as well to make sure you're registered to vote so you can vote April 7th. And I think it's important that we're out having these conversations just for the fact that it will probably be a larger voter turnout than normal. And we want everyone to have the facts of what is on the ballot that they will be voting for in addition to the city council. So that's why we're doing these presentations, giving the information, talking alongside the school district about not only the site and why they're doing it, but from a citizen's perspective, why it's important to support this bond issue as well.
We don't want people to show up at the ballot box and see names on the list for city council and a school bond and say, what does this involve? You want to educate people beforehand, give them
Right,
facts.
exactly. I think it's important that everybody understands the why and that they have faith that we're doing this in a reasonable, fiscally responsible way.
Okay. Now, for the voter turnout, as you mentioned, trying to get people out to vote, there's also absentee opportunities for people if they won't be here that day. There's a lot of ways that they can get involved. You have the website, I imagine, and you have a Facebook page. So briefly, were they tuned in late? Where can they get this information?
Well, we have a lot of the facts in this PowerPoint presentation and whatnot on our website at joplinschools.org. And then the committee has a Facebook and a site as well.
Vote Yes Joplin is our Facebook site, and so we're asking citizens and friends of the school district and students to share this information, where we'll be able to give information leading up to the bond request on April 7th. So if you have social media, Facebook, go on and you can like this page, and we'll be sharing information throughout the next 2 months leading up to April 7th.
And if someone has questions, whether they're watching today or they show up at one of your sessions, do you welcome those calls? You know, they say, well, I heard this, or, what ifs and things like that.
Absolutely, because I would much rather answer questions directly. And if someone has a question, I guarantee you several others have the same question. So I encourage that dialogue and email me, call me, show up at my door. This is our priority for the next 7 weeks, yes.
And timetable, kind of a final question. If it passes in April, what's your timetable for actually having children in the schools?
Well, it takes a while to do these things, and you have to issue your bonds, and then you have to go from schematic drawing to actual detailed drawings, and then there's the bid packages to get out. And we would encourage all of our local subcontractors, jump on board, help us, build this economically. And then, of course, site prep. So we're a good 2 more school years from being able to move into a new facility. And that's why time is of the essence, because at the same time we're looking at 2 years, we've got students still being served
in those
cramped, inadequate spaces. So I feel a sense of urgency with this one.
Well, Dr. Moss and Kelly, thank you very much for being with me today on the program.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
And I'd like to thank you, the viewers, for tuning in this week on Newsmakers. I'm Judy Stiles. Hope you could join me again next week at the same time. We'll see you then.